That's the mind state. Yeah, so at what moment, like, is that the moment when you really go to the state, right?
first I'll read the questions from yesterday. We didn't finish yesterday. So I was just asking Rinpoche because this is the question with the poisonous snake that Rinpoche mentioned today during the teachings. So the Rinpoche said that he actually already answered it then during the teaching, so no need to go through it again. If we obtain a precious human life because of a wisdom, mind, and compassion and love, why have some people obtained the body who have attained the body still extremely harmful and mean? So Rinpoche said, we are first of all, we are when we talk about the precious human life, that is not the same as an ordinary human life, and it is easier to find an ordinary human life if we have accumulated some virtue, but also non-virtue. We could be born as an ordinary human being and still have experience both happiness and suffering in this life. And so also like ordinary human beings might have been, for example, an animal in a previous life, and then that karma is coming somewhat to an end, or has not been purified through the animal realm, and then as a result of some virtue they are born as a human being, as somewhat a better incarnation as an animal, but still it doesn't mean it is a precious human being. That's why it is so difficult to find a precious human life. And then even though they are born as a human, still there is karma, a negative karma that is left in their mind as well. And for example, because they still have this imprints of hatred and jealousy and so on, they, for example, might experience a lot of illness in their life, or they might experience many other problems as they go through life, problems with friends and so forth, because they have both virtue and non-virtue. So they experience both happiness and suffering. And the happiness here is just a birth as a human. And so we have mentioned during the teachings that what we call a precious human life is a human life that possesses those 18 qualities, those 18 freedoms and fortunes. And even though there are many humans, they do not all actually have those 18 qualities. That is why we say those 18 qualities that make up a precious human life are extremely rare and very difficult to find, because most people actually do not have that, so they are ordinary people. And then it is possible that they also engage in many harmful actions and create much suffering around them. So again, and that is why we have said it is important that you study, especially those 8 freedoms. It really shows what we are free from, and why this is called a precious human life. So then you will see that it is quite different than an ordinary human life. why is wealth a sign of generosity from a previous life, when wealth in this life can sometimes bring great troubles? That has to do with also how wealth, how beneficial wealth becomes, has to do with the intention that we had when we practiced generosity. So we have mentioned that when you give, but with an intention to be protected from some difficulties or to get some good result in the future, for example, wishing to become rich in the future, then as a result, you might experience wealth, you might become rich, but then also because the intention was not entirely pure, it also leads to suffering in the end because it is not lasting. That is why Milarepa had said the rich suffer from the riches and the poor suffer from their poverty. Everything in samsara has the nature of suffering. Until we attain enlightenment, there is really only suffering. So especially when wealth comes to cause trouble, then it is because it was created through generosity, so it must lead to wealth, but then not with a pure intention, so that wealth is not reliable, stable wealth. So that is why it again causes trouble. For this reason, it is so important that whatever we do, like practicing generosity, that we think, I'm doing this in order to bring all sentient beings to enlightenment. If you have this vast intention, then whatever you do will always have a twofold result, a temporary and ultimate result. And then as a temporary result, you will still always find wealth, even if you just give a little, and also ultimately it will serve as the cause for enlightenment. So the crucial point is the intention. It all depends on the intention. That is why we always mention that the intention is so crucial, so important. Because if you cultivate any virtue, be it generosity or ethical discipline, whatever you do, if you have a selfish intention, then even though it will ripen, the merit will ripen, it will also come to an end. So when it ripens, you might obtain a human body, but then even though you find a human body and even wealth, in the end you might lose everything because that merit is coming to an end. That is why it is so important that whatever we do, that we cultivate an intention of bodhicitta. How should one understand the karmic causes of illness, chronic, not life-threatening, when it occurs in the absence of obvious and blatant afflictive emotions? So the Buddha had said, if you would like to know, if you wish to know what you did in the past, look at your present body. Whatever we experience in this life has already been created by our own afflictions and actions in a previous life. And now what is in our hands is our future. So it is said, if you would like to know where you will go next, look at your present actions. So the body that we have now, has already been created. It has already ripened from our actions in the past life, and we cannot change it much. But we can influence the future by being careful about our present actions, by discerning clearly between virtue and non-virtue. So in this way, our future happiness is really in our hands now. And a small cause will lead to a great result. So therefore it is important to be mindful about actions. And so Especially at this ongoing difficulty, even though you don't really identify a specific affliction associated with that problem, like illness, has also to do with the ultimate affliction of ignorance and unmindfulness. Because we are unmindful, we do not recognize the afflictions in the mind. So even though there are patterns of anger and jealousy and so forth, we do not recognize them because the mind is distracted and unmindful. So that is the ultimate affliction, and this is precisely why we continue to be afflicted, because we lack recognition of our affliction due to the ultimate affliction of ignorance. So even though they arise, we don't recognize it, and this is why we continue to be afflicted. And in fact, there are constant thoughts arising in our mind that are always there. And according to the Tibetan medical system, all the illnesses that we have are related to our afflictive emotions, and these are related to three types of illness: either illness related to the winds, or to the bile, like the bile, or related to phlegm. And these are related to the three afflictive emotions. And so I personally I believe in the powers of the Tibetan medicine. So I could recommend looking into that. Is there a difference between negative karma and obstacles to the practice in this lifetime? If yes, what is the difference, and how best to understand and work with obstacles such as illness? When you engage in Dharma practice, you experience obstacles, difficulties that arise. These arise due to the karma. So the karma is related to the obstacle. The karma not precisely is the obstacle, but because of karma we encounter an obstacle. What actually is the karma, the one who actually creates the karma, is the afflictive emotion that is still there right now in this moment in our mind. So that is the one to be identified, that affliction that is there at this present moment. And and that affliction, that afflicted state of mind, is the same in the mind of all sentient beings. So even though there are countless sentient beings, there's really only one affliction. Their affliction is the same. And then because sentient beings, driven by this affliction, engage in various actions, there appears a variety of manifestations of sentient beings and suffering. But ultimately it arises from this afflicted state of mind. And so this is where obstacles come from. And sometimes, especially when we engage in Dharma practice, we might encounter such obstacles. And actually, at that time, if you persevere as you engage in Dharma practice and a difficulty arises, if you persevere in that difficulty, then you are actually purifying a great deal of negative karma. It is very beneficial actually to purify negative karma as you engage in Dharma practice, because a great deal of negative karma can be purified by a rather small obstacle actually. And so when it arises, you should persevere nevertheless in the practice. You should practice patience, and also think of other sentient beings, practice Donglen, and think that I am taking on the suffering of all beings, and practicing for them, may all their obscurations, all their suffering become purified. And then rejoice in the obstacle, in the difficulty, and think that it is very beneficial because a great deal of negative karma is purified by a comparatively small obstacle. For example, it is just like when you're very sick, you have to sometimes do a surgery, and a surgery also hurts. You don't really like to do that, but you do it because you know it is the best thing to do. It is beneficial, and because you know that, you will not suffer so much. Already half the suffering is gone. And so this is how you should think. Whatever you encounter, whether you feel ill or you encounter other obstacles, other sufferings, other problems, what is most helpful in any of those circumstances is to remember karma and remember that, especially as I practice the Dharma, a great deal of karma is being purified. What deities in Hinduism and Christianity are worthy of refuge? The way in which we take refuge in different religions might be, the way in which we take refuge might be slightly different, but we can say that the meaning is still the same. And according to Buddhism, it depends whether or not somebody is worthy of refuge depends on the intention of that one. So if the intention is the benefit of all sentient beings, then anyone with that intention is worthy of refuge. So that is really what makes the difference. What is the intention? So even though we might call different deities different names, but essentially whoever has compassion is a Sangha, no matter what religion it is, and whoever has compassion for all beings is worthy of refuge. What is love and what does it mean? So bring to mind the feeling of somebody that you feel very close, that is right next to you. How do you feel? For example, it might be your friend or your parent or someone. You feel very happy. So sometimes you just feel very happy next to someone, and that is a sign that you love that person. So that is the feeling of love. Feeling of love is a feeling of happiness. So when you feel love, you feel naturally happy at that time. When you lack love, you feel unhappy. For example, when you think about someone that has helped you before in the past, you remember their kindness, then you will feel love for them, and in this moment you will feel happy. So then that is a sign that you have cultivated love. That is how you can identify love. And the more you think about the kindness of others, the more your love will increase. When is it safe to trust? The only thing you should trust in is love. And you should not actually try to figure out whether or not you can trust other people. It doesn't actually matter whether you can trust them. No matter what they do, you should always have a wish for them to be happy and for them to be well. And you should always think that no matter what they do, no matter how they are, I must at least never harm them. I must at least try to have no harmful thought toward them. And if I can, I shall help them, regardless of what they do and what they say. So we can't really decide. We can't really figure out when we can or if we can trust somebody. There's nothing that can tell us if we can trust somebody. And it doesn't really matter if we can trust others. The only thing that you need to trust in is your own love. For as long as you love others, it doesn't really matter what they do to you. What you can trust in is love and the three jewels, because if you have that protection of love, which is the essence of the three jewels, then you can trust that that will protect you from lifetime to lifetime. Those questions of today. I'm a middle-aged man with no family and no worldly responsibilities. I don't know whether I should start traveling and going into long retreats, or work for my career and build a new family. I'm inclined to choose retreat and full-time Dharma practice. Please advise me. Thank you. It is actually a good thing that you have this freedom to choose without any responsibilities. And that is difficult for many, because many worldly people find it very difficult if they do not have a family. But as Dharma practitioners, you should think that anything is good. So if you have a family, that is good, you can practice. If you do not have a family, that is even better, you can also practice. And so there's always an opportunity to practice. And so you should not travel around too much, because there's no point in doing that. You should you should continue to work some to make a living, and do some retreat, first in your home and then maybe longer later. But you should combine these and do some practice and also continue to work. But it is in general better to be by yourself. If you don't have a family, you don't have to start a family. In this way, you also have your freedom to practice. But according to the Dharma, you can make it something good out of any situation. There's nothing that is better. So if you have a family, it is also good, because then you have an opportunity to practice love and compassion. If you do not have a family, also it is good. Then you can focus more on retreat practice. So anything is used for something better when we practice the Dharma. For the Vajrasattva practice, it is easier for me to recollect the non-virtues created in in this life and apply the antidotes. But for the more heinous karmas created in past lives, it is hard for me to even envision and develop the strong feelings for applying the antidotes. What can I do to strengthen, overcome this, and improve the power of this practice to eliminate previous non-virtue? So it is whether you have committed virtue or non-virtue in this or in previous lives, it is in the mind right now. So it is most important to identify the affliction that is in the mind right now. That is the one that has created any kind of non-virtue in this or in past lives. And if you cannot really identify one, if you cannot find a very powerful affliction in this life, then it is also most likely a sign that your non-virtue is not so strong and not so powerful. So that is a good thing. But then still there is self-grasping, and that is where all the other afflictions arise from. And so that you should identify. Just identify, there's no need to think about each and every non-virtuous action that you have done, but rather focus on the cause that has caused all these non-virtuous actions. And that is always the same. It is the self-grasping mind and all the afflictions that are here right now in the mind. And that is the one who is doing all the negative things. So if you can, for example, you find some kind of problem, a suffering that you had in this life, then look at the affliction that has caused that. That affliction has done that. So that is important. It is important to recognize the affliction within the mind. For example, if you are poor, then you find the affliction of greed or stinginess. Or if you are frequently ill, or you are being abused, or somebody like you experience physical harm and things like that, then the afflictive emotion responsible for that is anger, hatred. Or for example, if things just don't work out, you're not very successful, then that is the result of jealousy, and so on. So try to recognize not the action or the outer circumstance, but more the inner afflictive emotions that has caused that. And then when that affliction arises, recognize it as soon as it arises. When it arises, then see that, oh, this is the cause of that sort of suffering, of that kind of problem. So if I act out on that, then it will ripen into such and such a suffering in the future. So practice like that with every affliction that arises. Recognize the affliction with mindfulness upon arising, and eventually, if you habituate that, the affliction will dissolve upon arising, and that is when the afflictive emotion becomes wisdom. As it arises, be mindful and recognize what arises in the mind. What are the 2 additional offerings beyond the traditional 8 that are presented in Chakrasamvara text page 77? Is there any significance to the Yapyum 10? Why the additional 2 here? For the offerings, it is also important to understand that the origins of these different types of offerings is according to a certain tradition, and in that case the old Indian tradition. Those things that were regarded special in those old days in India are described as offerings here. So because they were offered to a guest, somebody very special, whatever they have considered as very special at that time, that is what they mentioned in those offerings. So it is important to understand the context also when we see those offerings. For example, one of those additional offerings in the Chakrasamvara is when we make this mudra, the sprinkling of water, because at that time in India it was very hot, so it was refreshing and cooling to sprinkle some water. Or we offer water for the feet, because again the weather is very hot, and it is very pleasant after a travel to have your feet cooled in cold water. And so these were considered respectful things to offer, and that is why they are mentioned in the text as an offering to the Deity. And the purpose of offering to the Deity is that in the future it will bear a result, the result which is similar to the cause. Whatever you offer to the Deity will lead to a certain result. For example, if you offer flowers, then as a result in a future lifetime you will have like a beautiful body and a nice smell and so on. So it is important to understand the context and the custom of the country at that time. And especially in the Chakrasamvara, there are additional offerings that relate to the 4 joys that are cultivated during the practices of the channels and the winds. And these are offered by 16 offering goddesses who hold various offering substances in their hands and offer them to the deity. And so in total it makes then 16, but each of them offers those 4 joys. So the outer representation is that offering, or those offering goddesses. The inner meaning of it is the 4 joys. The 4 joys are really offered in this context. So again, here also it is important to always remember that all the descriptions in the text always have an outer, inner, and secret meaning. So the outer meaning here is what we read, the outer offering. The inner meaning in this context is the 4 joys that are related to the channels and wind practices. And then the secret meaning is in general the nature of the mind, the realization of the nature of the mind, and here specifically to the various levels of realization as one progresses on the stages and the paths, as one's realization deepens. So it is called secret because it is not so apparent. For example, the outer aspect of a person is the person's body. We can see the body. And then the inner aspect of the person is the person's thoughts and the afflictions. And then the secret aspect of the person is the nature of that person's mind, the Buddha nature, the empty mind, the space-like nature. It is called secret because it is difficult to see. We cannot think about it, we cannot see it. It is very subtle. That is why it is called secret. And so here in this context, the secret aspect of these offerings refers to the various levels of realization as we progress on the levels of the path. So it is important to keep in mind that when we read those offerings, that they all represent a deeper, more subtle meaning. Could you explain the meditation in the Chakrasamvara practice of the Ham Om Hung Am along the central channel? Is this a meditation we can practice outside the sadhana? This practice also relates to there's an elaborate explanation. It relates to the channels, winds, and drops practices, and especially the Tumo practice of the 6 yogas of Naropa, where we visualize the blazing of the fire and then the dripping down of the drops and the bodhicitta drops. And so it is something that you slowly familiarize yourself with. And in fact, you don't always have to do the sadhana, but the sadhana supports your visualization. But if you know the visualization, then that is more important. Then you can sometimes not even read the sadhana at all and only visualize all the time. In fact, all the sadhanas are only for the purpose of visualization. And ultimately, as we habituate to the practice, we eventually have no need for any sadhana recitation anymore, and we can only visualize. I have a chronic, non-life-threatening illness that leaves me very tired, and I have difficulty concentrating, among other things. I have realized that my ability to visualize, which was never great, has gotten worse, and when I try to concentrate, I have more trouble than I used to. I don't experience many strong afflictive emotions, but it is like my mind is slippery and I can't hold the intention. Should I return to practicing shamatha for some time, or is there something you would recommend to to help my practice can be most effective at this time? So, the first question. So Rinpoche said, this illness of feeling tired and a lack of concentration, clarity, is due to the karma of ignorance. So again, recognize the associated affliction. And also sometimes if you find it physically difficult to sit in meditation, it is also okay to lie down. Then if you can lie down on your right side and try to meditate that way. And for the practice, it is most beneficial to bring your mind to the navel. Try to focus your mind single-pointedly at the navel chakra. And there's no need to engage in other elaborated practices. So if you only focus on that, it will clarify your mind. And also warmth eventually is created if you focus at the navel center, and that warmth will also help you not to feel very tired. It will clarify your mind. So there is the Om Ahung Vajra recitation that you can practice, where you focus mainly at the at the navel, and that would be the best practice to do. And also when the sleepiness becomes very strong, in that case it is best to send your mind out into space, to not even visualize anything on your body, but to disconnect the mind from the body and to send the mind out into space, merge it with space. And whatever deity or so you visualize it out in space, pervading space, and merge your mind with that space. So that will also help you also with other illnesses, because the mind does not focus on the illness. Also, as before, remember that through the illness you purify a great deal of karma, and sometimes it is just like that surgery that you need to do in order to get better. In the same way, sometimes when we engage in Dharma practice, we fall ill, and that actually is very beneficial because a great deal of karma is being purified. Then my doctor has told me that this illness was caused by exposure to a mold mildew, and that I should avoid these things if I do not want to get worse. Both my parents' home and my home temple continued to test positive for the mold poisons, despite efforts to clean it up, and I noticed that my symptoms get worse when I spend time there. It does not affect my parents, but my susceptibility is genetic, and I was adopted. This has also made me so this something has also made me allergic. This condition has also made me allergic and sensitive to so many things that it has become very difficult to find a place to live. Should I continue to visit my parents to help them and to practice at the temple? What might be in the karmic root or attachment that is causing this situation? Is there something specific I can do to purify it as quickly as possible? So Rinpoche said, it is said, the Buddha had said, our illness is only a condition. The cause are our own past karmas, obscurations, afflictions. The condition are the obstacles, the evil spirits, illness, and so forth that cause all kinds of suffering. And so then we encounter all kinds of circumstances, for example, problems with our living situation or the food that we eat and so forth. And so that is karmic, and the illness and the environment that we react to is only a condition, but not what actually causes the suffering. And so for this reason, you will not be able to resolve it only by not going a certain place or moving somewhere else. So there is no need to avoid any place. You can continue to practice at your temple and also visit your parents, and again think that this karma is being purified. And since it is karma, for as long as it is ripening, it makes not a big difference where you move to physically, because the karma is still there. And so for a practice, it might be good to practice, for example, medicine Buddha, and also to think about Donglen, taking on the suffering of other beings, and think that I am purifying a great deal of negative karma on behalf of all other beings. But if you try to avoid the difficulty just by moving somewhere else or avoiding a certain place, it will just manifest in some other form for as long as the karma is there. So since the karma has already been created, we cannot really avoid its ripening. So therefore, you should continue to help your parents, serve your parents, especially that is most beneficial of all. And actually, by doing that, you purify even greater negative karma. It is said that if you physically serve, if you help your parents or your teachers, you are purifying a great deal of physical karma, obscurations of the body. And it has the same benefit as doing prostrations or circumambulations, any physical virtuous activity. So you should certainly continue to serve your parents. And another practice you can do is the Vajrasattva meditation, focusing especially on the visualization of the nectar stream that falls down from Vajrasattva and then fills up your entire body and purifies each and every channel in your body. And so again, also here, you should bring to mind the afflictive emotions that have caused any kind of problem, recognize the affliction, and then visualize it being purified. So you can visualize that this nectar stream from Vajrasattva above your crown enters into your central channel and then fills up your entire body, each and every channel, and pour, and it renders your body completely pure and transparent. So that visualization is very beneficial. And also, actually, if you have a prayer wheel, a small prayer wheel, you can practice that. This practice together with the prayer wheel. So when you practice Vajrasattva and recite the 100-syllable mantra, you can hold the prayer wheel at the same time and think that from the prayer wheel, like a 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva emerges. So when you hold it up, you can imagine it's like a nectar helicopter, and from this helicopter, it sprinkles nectar as the engine turns, and this nectar falls down like rain, and then fills up your entire body and purifies you. And so the spinning of the prayer wheel has the same benefit as the visualization of the mantra garland. So if it is difficult to visualize, you can just instead use the prayer wheel and think that just the nectar flows from the prayer wheel and purifies you. Jack will follow His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche's teaching from last night. Now the question is, should he take a long retreat for this textbook and practice a few hours per day, or specific to him, the meditation image with himself as Chakrasamvara and equal to love and compassion, his wife as Vajrayogini, equal to emptiness and wisdom, both Hung syllables radiating light for all his family with pure love, his family with sons as retinue, all sentient beings as parents. Finally, all families become light and go to His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche as the deity. Then the deity becomes light and goes to the Hung and doing Chakrasamvara, and then doing Chakrasamvara with Vajrayogini meditation. The Rinpoche said, so you should continue to practice the sadhana, but you don't have to do it every day. You can practice it like several times a month or like once a week. You can practice it at your home. You don't have to do a separate retreat. You can practice it at home. And later in life, if you have an opportunity to do retreat, you can think about it then. But for now, you can practice at home, and sometimes you can recite the sadhana. Sometimes you just visualize. Sometimes there's no need to recite the sadhana. And always, in general, always think that especially your family and really everyone surrounding you is the deity. So you have a pure view towards all, because that is really their true nature. All beings, aggregates, sense sources, and elements really are the deity by nature. And beings are only obscured temporarily by the obscuration of self-grasping. But then ultimately, by true nature, beings are pure. So bring that to mind again and again throughout the day. Think that the entire universe and all sentient beings are the deity. The entire outer universe that consists of the 5 elements is actually pure, and your own body is a microcosm of the outer universe. And then all the sentient beings within this universe are also completely pure, and your own mind is like the microcosm of all the sentient beings out in the universe. So cultivate a pure perception like that, and and with your family especially, cultivate the practice love, and then also patience to protect this love. And in that way, all your activities become the 6 paramitas. So what is the moment of death? When the throwing karma is enacted, when the breath stops, or when the consciousness leaves the body. So Rinpoche said that this moment of death that determines where we are born actually is way before the breath stops, and certainly before the consciousness leaves the body. Actually, it does not happen at the time when you are actually actively dying, because when you are dying, you go through the dissolution stages, and during the dissolution stages, you are beyond this throwing karma, beyond this moment that determines where you're going to be born. Because when everything dissolves at the actual death, the thoughts also dissolve. So at that time, this is not the time anymore that determines it. So it is actually far before you actually are in the dying process. It's just before you die, actually. So, for example, if you're very sick, for example, and you are just about to die, and then in that moment, it is possible that all kinds of things happen. For example, with your family, that cause you to become very afflicted. And so it is those afflictions then, when you're still alive, fully alive actually, that will decide where you will be born. And that is why it is important that we now practice, because when that happens, when you are close to death and a circumstance arises, then you will be able to sustain mindfulness and not become so afflicted in the first place. Then you might remember the Yidam Deity and stop the negative thought, or you might just be able to rest in the natural state of the mind and stop the negative thought, or you might be able to think of your guru with devotion and stop that thought. So if you're able to overcome that thought, then it cannot cause any harm for your future birth. It is only when you lack any mindfulness, when you're completely controlled by this thought, that it will become very powerful in determining your future birth. Therefore, now it is so important that we train in clear mindfulness. And so, at the time of death, when you come close to death, then actually you're not actually yet dying. But it seems to others perhaps that you might die, but your mind might still be very clear, even though some people are not able to say anything. For example, when I was in prison, I came very close to dying, and I was actually on my deathbed, and I was almost like dead. I could not talk, and people were around me, and they were crying around me. I was certain to die, but not in my mind. I was very clear, and I heard everything they said, and my mind was very bright. It is just that I couldn't talk because I was very ill at that time. But still, I was not dying. So the mind is still very clear at this time when we are really very close to death. And so this is then the time that is determining if we die, then what will be our future rebirth. And so therefore, I've personally experienced how beneficial it is to be able to remember like the Yidam Deity or mindfulness. That is when the practice becomes useful. And because at that time the mind becomes very alert, actually, that is the time when if you have practice, that you will remember whatever practice you have done, and when it will become truly beneficial, as the mind is very clear. So this time that determines the future birth happens before you actually die, and it arises in dependence on various conditions that arise. For example, you might have a conflict with your parents or your family or anything else that triggers an affliction just before you die. But when you actually die, everything dissolves, and along with that, the thoughts dissolve. So then actually the mind is not very afflicted when the thoughts dissolve. The worst the worst karma or juncture of death that is most detrimental for the future birth is to commit suicide. There's nothing worse than that, because that will this instant of dying just before death, that will certainly lead to the most extreme intense suffering in the future. Thank you for giving your time for the teaching. And verse number 13 of the practices of Bodhisattvas, it says to take on all the misdeeds of one whoever harms us. And how do we take on another's misdeeds? So when you see others engaging in negative action or they harm you, first again you need to recognize the cause of that, the afflictive emotion. It is because they are afflicted that they act in this negative way. And as a result of that, they will fall into the lower realms. So you feel compassion for them in the first place. And when you feel compassion and you really have a wish for them to be happy, then that is just like taking on their misdeed. That is what is meant with taking on their misdeed. So it is that when, even if others hurt you or harm you, if you do not get angry at them, if you feel love and compassion for them, then you're taking on their misdeed. So it is very difficult to feel a sincere sense of love for those who are actually harming you. But you should think that in the beginning, even if I cannot have a genuine feeling of love, at least I should not get angry at them and understand their afflicted state of mind. And also think that in a past life, and this person was very dear to me, and I have treated them badly, and now they come back as an enemy. So taking on the misdeeds of others really means that you feel love for them, you're patient, and you're not getting angry at them. That is like taking on their misdeeds.
다다 가다 마유리 아 가치오지 한콜지 같이 보여래 대통 한콜이 어디 거고요래 어디 거고인데 대통 빠타비 감정사 반들이 제요래 이 감정 다다 건 어디 거고요래 이나 어디 거기 매 지금 거다 지금 강반 일이 거고요래 다다 내리 말잖아 야는데 대통은 아니 마도 이루로 고털었더니 이리지네 인정사 빠져 홍구 잡지는 제네 이 한번 세가 타고는 좀 로라지들이 제 마치 빠지들이 이 보고요 이게 양 제 맥바 산나스 저도 속보로 초바디가 치고 있고요 이게는 한번 양절랑 결국요 이리지네 홍구 이리 먼저 잡아지 이리 콜레 양절지 내가 마냥 받지 양 속보로 야당데 공다 치고요리 저도 봐 이거는 보면 한층도 공고요리 얘는 망나야 타쳐고 거기지 한층 콜로도 보냐리 에 비치고리 즉 드니 뭐 참신다니 에 사와타바티 마스는 진 맞자때 봐 마sla지 무슨게라 말이 되기 치고리 이 탐면들이 이나 제 방을지네 소소라지 샤가 셈지 바로 생기지 집발이 주니 돈다고 대망 셈지 집발이 얘네 사람 아니 집발 가리도 뭐 나는 다지 요리 콜라리 나는 이피 로로리 이가 생기서 핑고서 내가 라지 셈무시리 기름 사람 마셨다 대요 맛이 탐면이 대요 신의 기와치라 먹을 때도 뭐야 이거니 화장지 가버뜨게 내 빠져오니 다다 레바느냐고 쪽잖아 제가 먹을래 저 친구 노래 하자 가르친 거래 이제다 마시나 아무튼 호땅지라 라는 가자때 봐 대요 기침 거래
So one important thing about the visualization in the Chakrasamvara practice, so the main visualization in the practice is the circling of the mantra garland between the yap and the yum, and so the way the mantra garland emerges is that from that hung syllable, a new mantra garland of the mantra of the deity emerges. And so here in the context of Chakrasamvara, it first descends down. So that means it first emerges from the lower part of the hung syllable, which is that hook of the vowel sound of the hung syllable, that lower part. A mantra garland emerges, and and it is like a train. So the first syllable leads the other syllables, and which follow always after the first syllable. And so then as it turns, it becomes like upside down, And again, still the first syllable leads until it comes back again to the heart after it has taken this round. And then it descends down and dissolves into the hung syllable. Now in the top part, dissolving into the top part, the circle of the hung syllable. And then when a new mantra garland emerges, first the old one completely dissolves and then a completely new one emerges anew. And then in order not to lose one's drops during the Chakrasamvara practice, we can also reverse the visualization, and then we visualize the same thing in the other direction. And in that case, the mantra garland emerges first from the top part of the hung and then dissolves into the bottom part of the hung. So that is the most important part of the visualization. Even though in the creation stage of this practice there is much to be visualized, the mantra garland as it circles is most important. And then, as with all visualizations, normally visualizations are practiced in three aspects. One is clarity, and then there is purity, and then the divine pride. And so of these, the divine pride is most important. And here you need to resolve, am I actually the deity? How am I really the deity? And so for that you need to understand the deity's mind, and that your own mind is the same by nature as the mind of the deity. On the basis of empty dharmata, there's not the slightest difference. But then because I have given rise to self-grasping, I have created samsara. Because the deity has an altruistic mind, it is enlightened. And so, therefore, if I also cultivate an altruistic mind that wishes to benefit others, then I'm not any different from the deity. I really am the deity. And if you have this certainty, even if your creation stage, the other visualizations are not so clear, that is actually sufficient. Because that is what is most significant to keep within you in all future lives. It is just like a computer, like I guess a program or something. You store it, you save it in a computer, and it can be retrieved later on. So you place it into the mind now, and it will still be there in the future lifetimes. So it will still benefit you in future lifetimes. So of all the different aspects of this practice, the most important are the visualization of the mantra garland, and the circling mantra garland, and then the divine pride of being the deity.
That's good. Okay. Oh, the Rinpoche this one the ngaz on zeram sarba che yo is nani ga gonda. Then zeram the dere do nani ga gonda te tada de yor de chizo den shabram do ya yo shabram chetang shabram do ya yo chizo na ngaso shabram do yo shabram la na ha ko yo de shabtin mari chetang ngaso shabtin chetang shabtin do yo ran de chizo na ni ene show个记得等你我送个有的送波个记得下边都个有了，你如果这个哪年个讲到那我投资把到慢慢不这个下边退下就有了，那我投资多了的下边我是多么，你这说个记当等你样大样一马三把等着样起来下边等着平年话，等到参加个记得等你哪年个讲到，show我当送波你加个记得。show个记得我把米给下边都这是那个颜色，我把米抽啊，你送波个记得阿记当的没啦，这个颜色那你个讲到其实周当这个呢，其实结巴巴的，냠呢，谁看见
？So one addition to our program, Rinpoche wanted to do a practice on Monday evening because for the last at the center for the last 6 months or so we have done puja practices for those who have deceased or passed away, and also for those who are alive. And so for all of these together, and also for those to come, Rinpoche wants to do a Amitabha practice, and also an Amitabha practice for those who have passed away, and then Achi and Medicine Buddha practice for those who are alive on a Monday at 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Right?
Yeah. Tomorrow.